Communication is really at the heart of all human connection, and it is such a difficult skill because it's so nuanced. You can feel something, but nobody knows that you feel it unless you tell them. And for some people, you telling them what you feel is enough. But for other people, they need you to show them because actions often speak louder than words. And if you're willing to show them, in addition to telling them, then depending on how you choose to go about showing them, that's going to land differently for different people. So I totally understand where some people are like, this is too much for me, I'm just going to check out. And I think that's really unfortunate, but I am personally very, very invested in trying to figure this out.
Smile.
But I'm not happy.
People are staring.
I don't want to do this.
You have to. They'll know
No one
something's
cares
wrong.
about your
Why
life.
is that bad?
Nobody cares. They won't understand.
Nobody
I want to go
cares.
home.
You'll hurt their feelings.
This is ridiculous.
What are we even talking about? Just keep them happy.
What if they
They're
think
gonna
you're
be mean?
stupid?
Just keep them happy. Just keep them happy.
Just lie.
I'm not here to sugarcoat, life's already a bumpy road. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you out. Let's talk it through, here me and you, let's keep it real honest.
Hey, you're listening to Real Honest, the podcast where I share candid thoughts and feelings about life, love, and relationships, God and church, adulting, the workplace, and all the things in between. However you found me, I hope you feel seen, learn something, shift your perspective, and walk away empowered to live honestly. I'm always trying to figure out how to communicate more clearly because I'm very aware of the fact that it does not matter how clear I think I'm being. I'm always going to be misunderstood by somebody in some way, shape, or form. So jumping right into the goals check-in this week, my main goal for the year is completing the first draft of my novel to get it to a point where I'm ready to start sending out to look for agents and editors and a publisher. And as a part of my drafting process, I've shared it with some friends and family who have volunteered to be my beta readers. And it's just been so interesting to see how different people interpret my instructions. So like I sent them, I guess I should back up and first say that typically you should not share a work in progress draft with beta readers because beta readers are not supposed to help you workshop your novel. Their job is just to read it and share their perspective of the reader experience to say like, I felt like this worked and this didn't work. I liked this and I didn't like this. They're not supposed to give you advice of like, this didn't work, but I think if you did this, then it could work or something like that because they're not writers. They're specifically letting you know like how your story lands, how the reading experience was. Was it slow? You know, how was the pacing? That kind of thing. So I also had to be aware of like, I brought them in earlier in the process because these are my friends and family, which your beta readers are also not supposed to be your friends and family, but just because they know that I've been working on this for a long time and they're interested in the story that I'm telling. Like I did have people like open to reading different iterations of the book. So they have read the first draft and I'm currently working on the second draft and I'm sending it to them one act at a time in case there's any like large glaring error that I need to fix before I continue to move forward. So I sent them this email that I thought pretty clearly outlined like, all right, so here's the link to draft 1, which you've already read. Here is the link to act 1, draft 2. So draft 2 only includes the first act. I've included the full first draft link here if you want to compare the two, but you don't need to. The only thing I'm asking you to review now is the first act, draft 2, and that's all that exists in the draft 2 doc. And I also gave them a recap of like how I'm writing this. So I'm using the Save the Cat beat sheet. If you're not familiar with it, I talked about it in a previous episode, but you can Google it. But it's an outline basically of how to craft a story. And so act 1 is story beats 1 through 5. And so I reiterated for them what each of those beats are because I've asked them as you're reading, I want you to answer the question, is this scene accomplishing the beat? For example, beat 1, which is the very first beat in a novel, is called the opening image. It is intended to give the reader a snapshot of the main character's life before everything changes. And then beat 2 is an introduction where it's now telling the reader a bit more of the character's world. So the opening image is typically just one scene, and then the world overview can be multiple scenes, and it's more setting up like, who is this person, who's in their life, what do they do day to day, and making sure the reader gets a very clear picture of who this person is before the inciting incident happens that sends them on the journey of the novel. So I was asking my beta readers, like, do you feel like this opening scene is a snapshot of this girl's life? And then do you feel like the next 3 or 4, I think, scenes are giving you a clearer picture of her world? So I put a bulleted list of, what each of the beats are. And we had discussed in previous meetings that I would like them to put feedback, like just make comments in the Google Doc, but they are also welcome to call me, text me, send me voice notes, email me, like whatever is most convenient for them and their thoughts. And so what I've always found funny is one of the beta readers typically takes I also gave them a bulleted list of things that I'm looking for, which says like, do you find anything confusing or unclear? Are there any points where you are bored? Are there any points where you specifically dislike the main character? And she will always take this bulleted list and she'll leave a very long comment at the bottom of the doc with the bulleted list answering each of those questions for the scene that she just read, which I just find very interesting because for me, the intention was have this list in mind of things to think of while you're giving feedback, and then leave the comment on the specific thing. So if there is a sentence that you find confusing, highlight that, add a comment, say this is confusing, or highlight a sentence, add a comment, say I'm bored. And a lot of times, the very long comment at the end will be like, is anything confusing? No. Are you bored? No. Are you confused? Do you dislike the main character at any point? No. And I'm like, okay, well, if the answer is no to everything, then you don't need to leave any comment. But that's just how her brain works. And it's is this a hill for me to die on? Is this a point for me to say hey, I don't like how you're doing this. Please do it differently. No, it's just for me to understand that when we had a conversation and discussed how everybody was going to leave feedback, and I was not totally clear about the way that I wanted it done and what I envisioned, but also I thought that I laid it out that way, and it turns out that I did not, at least for this person, and that's totally not a problem. It's just a difference of the way that our brains interpret information. In any case, the feedback is coming in, and I am on track to finish draft 2 when I want to, and so I'm very excited. I think it's going pretty well. I think in my last episode or 2, I had mentioned that I had not had time to watch church consistently on Sundays for a number of weeks now because I've been out of town and traveling and working multiple jobs and just a lot of things I've been letting get in the way. So for the past couple weeks, I have gotten back on track with that. And also have been able to resume my small group, which worked out really well because the sermon yesterday was in a way about service, which is what my small group is studying on Saturday mornings right now. And so the thing that I feel like I'm learning from God right now, my main takeaway from the sermon was, if there is something that you want in life or something that you feel like is missing, find a way to serve somebody else with that thing. So, for me, my deepest desire is to be known really well. And so the way, a way that I can find a way to serve that is just choose people in my life and find ways to make them feel known really well and see if doing that for another person kind of helps fill the, hole that I feel like is in my life. So I've been trying to do that more lately, and I think it has been transformational in the way in me feeling disconnected from people. I definitely have felt more connected, trying to focus on how can I make you feel known here. And part of, if you listen to mine and Cody's discussion last week, at one point during that conversation, he said that it's been very clear to him for years that I have this need for people to know me, but I think that conversation was the first time that I was able to connect, I want to be known well and know other people well. The other people had not always been clear, or the fact that it's because I care about you so deeply that I want to be like fully honest and raw with you, and I want you to do that back to me. Like, the point is for us to know each other well. It's not just about me. But after talking to him and then talking to my therapist, I was just kind of sitting and evaluating, like, I feel like I end a lot of conversations evaluating, like, if I don't feel good after the conversation, I kind of feel like that person didn't ask me the right questions. Like, they didn't ask questions that make me feel like we know each other, or like they asked questions or said things that like made me feel this way. And like, now I'm so disappointed. But a lot of times I also was not asking them the questions either. I feel like in a lot of cases, like if somebody calls me and they ask like, how's work, how's the weather, and I tell them, and then like that's kind of the whole conversation we get off the phone. Usually I'll get off the phone and I'll be like, that was a waste of my time. Why did they call me to talk about work and the weather? Like, clearly they didn't need anything. And, you know, for one, I'm making an assumption here, because maybe they did need something, but they didn't know how to communicate it to me. Maybe, and it is, I usually assume that like they're just a surface level person and they can't go deep and they're not interested in going deep. And so a lot of times, because I assume that, I don't try with them, because oftentimes when I try and I do ask the person a lot of like deeper questions, if they're not able to respond, or like that type of conversation bothers them or makes them uncomfortable because they're not used to it, then I feel bad, because I'm like, if talking about work and the weather was enough for them, why am I gonna make them uncomfortable and destroy their day by saying, you like, you know, I hate when you call me to talk about this. Like, if you don't have something to talk about, then like, let's not talk. You know, like, I never want to do that to anyone. So I always say, like, if they feel comfortable and connected to me by discussing work and the weather and they don't need anything else, you know, it's not really harming me to do that. So I may as well just do that and move on. But the truth is that I guess it does emotionally harm me, because it does make me sad. I'm like, this really is not enough for me. This is not conversation that I find fulfilling. And look, there are people that are just physically and emotionally incapable of doing it. And that's okay. I don't fault those people. I'm not upset with those people. Those are just not people that I am going to be in deep relationship with. And that's totally okay. But for people that are capable and are willing, I want to do a better job helping them learn. And that's my topic for today, titled after Taylor Swift's "Who's Gonna Know You Like Me?" It's from the song The Tortured Poets Department, which is talking about a breakup and asking, you know, the person who's ended this relationship with you these questions, like, who else decodes you? Who else is going to know you like me? Who's going to hold you like me? Nobody. Like, I know you so much more intimately than anyone else ever could, or at least, you know, it's that feeling or that belief. And I'm expanding that from romantic to all relationships, because I think in every relationship and every aspect, nobody is ever going to know you the same as another person does, because all of us do it differently, and all of us have different needs and different wants in that area. So I'm going to try to break down some different ways and levels of knowing someone, starting off with just very simple context. If you were to receive a text right now that said, "Do you want to see insert movie title?" Your response to that text is going to depend on the context, right? Who sent it? What movie are they talking about? When are they looking to see it? What time is it right now that I'm receiving this message? A lot of this context can be inferred based on the person that sent it. So for example, I have a very small handful of friends that live close enough to me to physically see a movie with. So if any of my out-of-state friends texted me, "Do I want to see any certain movie?" I would assume that they're just asking me generally, do I have a desire to see it? They're not asking me to go see it with them, because we physically are unable to do that. Whereas if any of my friends that do live in the area that I could meet up with and see it, I would assume that they were asking me to go see it with them. Another example is if a friend sends me a picture of their food and I have context, say from a previous conversation where I know that this friend is, either an aspiring chef or they just really love cooking. Maybe we've talked about how they're working on their plating. Then when I get this picture of their food, I can connect it to the context of the previous conversation and say, okay, this person's trying a new recipe, they're working on their plating. So my response to the message is going to be, oh my gosh, that plating is beautiful. Where did you get this recipe? What does it taste like? But if I don't have that context and I just get a random photo from somebody of their food, I'm sitting there looking at it like, what do you want to do with this? What are you trying to communicate with this? And it could be a lot of things. It could be like, I'm just informing you that I'm eating right now. It could be I'm bored and taking a picture of my food is just something to do. I'm not actually looking for any type of response. And it's based off of how well I know the person who sent me the photo and how we converse with one another that I'm able to understand the purpose of them sending me the photo and what type of response I should be giving. And the person who sent the photo already has that context, right? Like they're thinking something when they take a picture of your food and send it to somebody. You're thinking, this is beautiful and I just want to share it with someone. You're thinking this is so amazing and I want to make my friend hungry. Like I'm telling my friend, I wish you were here with me, and all of that like could be happening in your mind, but all you do is take a picture and send it to them. And based on your relationship and how well you know each other, they might immediately be like, oh, you're out at our favorite restaurant and missing me. Like, thanks, that's so sweet. But if they don't have that context, you guys have never talked about it, if you don't have that type of relationship, if that's not there, then all you're doing is sending a picture of your food and it's not communicating anything. If you are on the receiving end of the picture of the food and you have no context and you have no idea why it was sent to you or what the person is trying to communicate, a great way to bring conversation deeper is to ask more questions. Like, why did you send this to me, for starters? And if they're like, oh, I was just out to eat and like wanted to share, then maybe you say like, where are you out to eat? Are you enjoying this meal? What are you enjoying about it? And then you can learn more about the person to understand like why their choice was to send you the photo. To bring this a little deeper, I keep seeing women on social media complaining that dating is so hard out here because we're getting more emotionally intelligent and the men are not. So if you are a straight man out there that genuinely likes and is interested in women, let me give you a very, very simple tip that will make dating so much easier for you, and it is to ask questions. When we're out here meeting new people and trying to date, and we ask a guy, how was your day? 9 out of 10 dudes are responding with fine or good. One word. Be the one that gives us a sentence or two, telling us something specific that you did today that we can ask a follow-up question about to learn more about you and find out what you're interested in. And the inverse of that is when you're asking us how our day was, we're often going to tell you a story. And 9 out of 10 dudes are going to say, cool, glad you had a good day. Be the one that asks us, that chooses a specific thing from the story that we told that you find interesting to ask a follow-up question about. Telling somebody, I'm into you, I like listening to you, is one thing. But that's not meaningful unless you follow it up by showing us that you're interested and you find us interesting. And you do that by asking questions. That shows interest. That shows that you want the conversation to continue. If you don't know, always ask for clarification, because when making assumptions, it's very easy to be wrong. I'll give you guys an example. I have recently been talking with my mom about how like I want to be able to stop having like this surface level conversation all the time exclusively, and I want to be able to go deeper. And one of the issues that I was having is I feel like she and my dad are very critical of me, and they are very positive and appraising when they talk to other people about me, but not when they're talking to my face. Like I don't feel like I get enough like positive reinforcement from them. And my mom heard that, and her takeaway was, okay, I need to be more positive. I need to give her more compliments, which is great. That's another way to say what I said, and that's another thing I highly recommend, is that when somebody gives you feedback, repeat back to them, what I'm hearing is, and then repeat back what you heard them say so that they can confirm that that's what they heard, or so that they can say it differently. So my mom recently sent me a compliment. She reached out and said, like, hey, I just wanted to tell you, like, I think that your hair is so beautiful and I'm so proud of you for growing it out and not doing any more chemical treatments. And while this was a very lovely message that was giving me praise and complimenting me, I was confused because I was like, I have not decided to not do any more chemical treatments. And so we've been texturizing my hair since I was really little. I've never done it super often. Like most people that get any type of chemical hair treatment typically get it every 2 to 3 months. And I was only doing it like once a year, really at the most frequent. And so there was a time that a couple years ago, I had decided to fully stop doing them, and I was going to just like completely grow out my my natural hair texture, but it just got unruly and I couldn't handle it. And I was like, nope, got to go back. Like, this isn't working. This has been 2 years of misery. I don't want to do this anymore. And so we decided to start doing the texturizer again. And we had talked about like, okay, if we're going to do this, like, let's get on a schedule and make sure we're doing it like with a certain amount of frequency. And it depends on how quick or slow your hair grows. But the idea, basically, a chemical treatment alters the texture of your hair, and so when it grows out to a certain length, you do it again because the new growth is then going to be a different texture from the part that you have treated previously. But my hair grows really, really slow, and we don't do like an aggressive treatment. Like the new texture that I do, it's like a relaxing of my curl pattern. It's not like fully straightening a curl. It's not so different that it's highly noticeable unless a significant amount of time has passed. And I just give all this context to say, like, my mom and I had agreed that we were going to do it every so many months or whatever, and that amount of time passed, and I wasn't having any issues with my hair. I was like, I'm still totally able to manage it. And then the whole reason that after I had gone the 2 years without a chemical treatment, and then I asked her to do it again, was because I could not, like, there were no products that were working. I couldn't get a comb through it. Like, it just was so hard for me to manage, and I have not gotten anywhere close to that place. Like, it's been super easy to manage. I think it's been a year maybe since we did it. I have to look back at my calendar. But anyway, so because we had agreed to this schedule and I had not followed up with her according to the schedule to say, I'm ready to get my next treatment, she assumed that I decided again that I'm not going to get another treatment and that like I'm done and I'm just growing out my natural hair, which I'm sitting here like, I see how she got there. I see why she made that assumption, but it was an assumption because I never went to her and said, I changed my mind. I don't want another treatment. What I said was, I'll reach out to you when I need one, and I haven't needed one, which is why I haven't reached out. And this is how misunderstandings happen, right? This is a small thing. It's not a big deal. Nobody was harmed by this. It totally doesn't matter, and that's part of why I'm using that example. But to bring it back to being known, like when I got that text that was like, oh, I'm so glad that you're not going to get any more chemical treatments and you're growing out your natural hair, I was like, I'm not doing that. So like here you are complimenting me for something that's not even true. And that makes me feel like you don't know me, because if you knew me well, you would know that like I just don't want to get unnecessary treatments. Like I don't want to keep putting chemicals on my head if I don't feel like I have to, and I haven't felt like I had to in a long time. So like as long as I can go, I will, but I definitely have not made a decision to never do it again. But it's also interesting because my mom would probably say that she knows my hair really well because my mom has been my hairstylist my entire life. However, it was very different when I lived in her house and she was doing my hair every week. But then I went to college and like maybe I was going back to her house and having it done once a month. And then I graduated college and I was living on my own and I was more having her do something to it like once a quarter. Whereas like I'm the one that is doing my hair every single day. And so I have seen it through more texture changes than she has. and I'm the one that's like living with it. And like a lot of times she'll recommend like products to me and be like, this would work really well in your hair. And I'm just like, I have products that work really well in my hair. And there's like this disconnect because from her perspective, it's like, I am the hair expert. I went to cosmetology school, but I am also like, you're no longer an expert on my hair because you don't touch it as often as you used to. So the fundamental sticking point is like feeling known. Like she feels like she knows about this area of my life and I feel like she doesn't. And like that is a disconnect. A lot of these misunderstandings and the gaps in being known, I do think are generational. My sister actually sent me this really interesting blog post recently where it's a 38-year-old male who wrote a post about visiting his parents for the first time in a while and how essentially like they only did small talk. Like they asked him like how his drive was and how his dogs were, and he spent I forget if it was a weekend or more time than that, but he was like, in all the time that we spent together, these are the only questions that they asked me, and they asked me these questions multiple times, but they never asked like how I'm actually doing or like how I feel. And I felt like super seen and known by my sister for sharing this article with me, because my sister and all she did was send me the article and say like, hey, I think this is like what you've been talking about. And, and that was all the context that she gave me. But like when I read through the article, I was like, yes, this is exactly what I've been talking about for years. And the fact that she found something where somebody else was talking about the exact same thing that I've been complaining about for so long, she's like, oh my gosh, this person gets you. I totally understand what he's saying here too. And I was like, awesome. And then we were able to have like a conversation about it. And I was like, I think this would be a really good podcast topic. And my sister was like, yeah, I agree. And like that felt really connected for me. And I'm going to put the article in the show notes if any of you want to read it, but I'm going to read you a couple excerpts from it that I found really interesting. So the writer, Daniel Morin, he called it logistical love, these like the small talk questions that older generations ask. And he said, I want to stress this is a real form of love. They're tracking my life. They're paying attention. They want to know about the drive because they're glad I made it safely. They want to know about my dogs because they're trying to be good grandparents by proxy to two animals that they've never met. They want to know about the weather and work and my route to the station because these are data points of their son's life that they've been trained by their own upbringing to ask about. He goes on to say, if you spend 3 decades being asked only about the surface of your life by the people who are supposed to know you best, you eventually stop having access to the inside of yourself. That sounds dramatic, but it isn't. It's just the slow effect of repetition. You learn very young what's askable and what isn't. The askable things get rehearsed and refined. They become the part of your life you can describe at speed. The unaskable things, the fears, the regrets, the slow questions, the bits of you that don't have neat answers, stay in a kind of cellar. Nobody's gone down there in years. The light fixture probably doesn't work anymore. That's the end of the quote. And I think this so eloquently puts into words like what I've been trying to explain for 4 seasons of this podcast, of like feeling like I like hating small talk and like why that bothers me, and the difference between loving someone but being able to communicate to them, like loving someone versus them feeling that you love them, like those being 2 different things. And so like for me personally, I feel like when my parents ask if I got home safe, that doesn't make me feel loved. It's like a check the box thing. Like what makes me feel loved is when they ask, like they learn something about my life that is important to me, and they ask about that. Like how are you feeling? How is the process of editing your book with feedback from your friends going? Like what types of notes are they giving that you find helpful? Like if they would ask me those questions, I would feel like they get me. But I think the piece that I have been missing is acknowledging that I know that they have learned in their life that making sure your children are safe is how you communicate love to your children. And I don't want to discredit that, because I still think that it is important and it is valid. I recently ended a relationship because the guy that I was dating was also of a different generation, and the conversation was very logistical. It was about like that I was safe, that I was fed, which, you know, I don't want to say that those things are not important. Like, that was how he communicated care, but he was not able to go deeper than that to communicate care in the way that I personally need to be cared for. You know, he would tell me that I'm attractive and I'm smart and that he likes listening to me, and he would listen to me talk. I mean, like, I could talk for 30, 45 minutes, an hour, and he would sit and listen. But when I was done talking, whether I talked for 5 minutes or 5 hours, he would not respond to me. And so, you know, we kept having like butting heads to where I was like, I think you just like the sound of my voice. Like, I think you find the sound of my voice pleasant, but you don't care about the words coming out of it. And he's like, of course I care. I love listening to you. I listen to everything you say. And I don't want to say that that's untrue, because I do believe that he was an honest man, and I believe that he meant that. But the problem was that in order for me to feel like he cared about what I said, I needed him to give me some type of feedback. I needed him to converse with me, and he wasn't conversing with me. He was just sitting and listening to me and not giving me anything back. And a lot of times I would try to dig, like when he told me that he likes me for so much more than my appearance, I would say like, okay, what do you like about me? And it would still be more surface level things of like, you're smart. And I'd be like, okay, how do you know that I'm smart? And it's like those questions confused him, and he kind of like froze up. And so if I go back to what Daniel Morin said in it was on siliconcanals.com, by the way, this article that I'm reading, but what he said in his article was that, you know, imagine if you spend 3 decades being asked only about the surface of your life by the people who are supposed to know you best, you eventually stop having access to the inside of yourself. And so I'm like, you know, I'm 33, so like imagine spending 4, 5, 6, 7 decades like only talking about surface level stuff. Like, I think a lot of the older generations have unfortunately lost access to that inner part of themselves because they were never asked about it, and they don't know what it means to be known in this way that millennials and Gen Z, the therapy generations, are learning to know each other and are feeling seen. And we want more of that, because it feels really good. And it's like, wow, like my friends know me and they get me in the way that like my parents or other people in my life that are a little older, like don't seem to even have access to. Which just brings me back to everybody should go to therapy. I do not care how old or young you are. I think therapy can benefit every single human on the planet. But this is something that I learned in therapy too, is how to check in with my emotions, how to know and understand what I'm feeling in my mind and in my body so that I can appropriately react and respond in the world. And because I've gotten so good at that, I need people in my life who are also good at it. It can't be something that someone is just starting out learning. And I think that's something that I learned by being in the relationship, because I went into it understanding like, okay, there are communication skills that I have that this other person doesn't have. And I think it would be unfair to not give him a chance because of that, when this is something that I can teach him. And I tried to do it for a while, but it started to feel very emotionally exhausting to me, because I felt like I had to start and carry every single conversation, where like at one point we went a whole week without talking, and I thought it was because he was still processing the previous conversation that we had because I had asked him a lot of questions and I was telling him like what I was thinking and what I was feeling, and he didn't respond. And so I gave him the week to process, and then I followed up and I said like, hey, just want to see like where you're at with things. Are you still processing? And he was like, am I still processing what? Like, what are you talking about? And so, you know, where I thought he was still processing because I had given him so much to respond to him, like the conversation was over. And I think it's because a lot of these, like, here's what I'm feeling that you need in this relationship. Can you tell me if I'm correct about that? Like, if you've never been asked those kind of questions before, if you're not an introspective person, if you don't go to therapy and you don't journal and you don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out what's going on inside of you, it is very uncomfortable to do. Like, my first 2 years of therapy, I was very uncomfortable, and I was like, I don't like this, like, mirror being held up to me. I don't like my therapist, like, certain things that my therapist would say made me really uncomfortable because it was so new and different from what I was used to. And I think, like, what I learned is that I'm not a therapist, and I don't want to teach people how to do this. Like, I want to converse with people that know how to do this, because ultimately what I'm looking for, and this is another thing that I had talked about, was like part of this relationship that I was in was like me trying to figure out what purpose a romantic relationship serves in my adult life. Because I know that I don't want children, and I am open to but don't need to get married, I'm like, okay, what's the point in dating? And I've decided that what I personally desire in a partner is somebody that I can grow with. Like, I want there to be things that we can teach each other, but I ultimately want us to be able to build things together where we're both bringing something to the table. I don't want to be in a relationship where I feel like the man is standing behind me, like pointing to me, being like, look at her shine. I want him to be standing next to me in the spotlight. Like, I want us to be pushing each other to do things that, like, we are interested in doing, that's pushing us toward personal growth. And I felt like I ultimately was in a relationship with somebody who, like, was very kind and very accommodating. And if I asked him to do something, he would do it. But then it wasn't like something that he naturally wanted to do on his own. And so an example that I would give of that is like with health and fitness, for example. I have a lot of friends who are really, really like my best friend is really into health and fitness, is at the gym at 5 a.m. every day. He's working with a personal trainer, and that is not the life that I'm trying to live. I have no interest in that, but I do want to be active and healthy. And so I love having a best friend who is more active and has better nutritional habits than I am, because he inspires me to elevate that part of my life. And when I visit him, he doesn't force me to be the type of active that he is or to eat the way that he does. He says, like, here's what I'm doing and you're welcome to join me or not. And so it was one of those things where he's like, I'm going to go to the gym at 5 a.m. every day, and I'm also going to go on an hour-long walk later in the day. And so I told him, like, I'm going to sleep in. I'm not going to join you at the gym, but I do want to join you on a walk because I want to be active, and I'm cool with just the hour walk. And that is an example of what I would look for in a romantic partner down the road if I ever choose to look for one again. You know, someone where, like, we both have, like, health and fitness as an area that's important to both of us, and we're both pushing each other, we're both pushing ourselves toward our goals, and we're supporting each other. And it's not something where, like, I have to drag them along, and if I wasn't asking them to do it, they wouldn't do it. And it's not something where, like, they have to drag me along or push me. Like, I want it to feel like an even partnership, but ultimately I want the goal to be personal growth for us as individuals and for us as a team. I also think it's important for all of us to always be open to learning and always be open to communicating differently. Like, another thing that Cody mentioned in our conversation on last week's podcast was that he is always taking in new pieces of information, and he is always willing to change his opinion based on the new information that he gets. An example that I will give of that is the idea that people hear tone over words is something that is honestly new to me. I learned that on Jay Shetty's podcast a few weeks ago, and I think it's really simple, and I think that it makes sense. but I also didn't really understand it until I heard that talked about on his podcast. And I was like, oh, that is why it's so difficult for me to communicate with certain people in my life, because I'm a very excitable person. Like when I get excited about a certain topic, whether like positive excitement or negative excitement, I get very loud, I get very animated. And I didn't realize that that was stopping certain people from being able to hear me. An example I will give is recently my parents visited me, and the three of us were sitting down and having a conversation, and I was telling them about a work relationship that I find very stressful. And I detailed for them like why it's so stressful for me. And I gave some examples of like things that the person at work asks me that I find really frustrating. And my dad kind of paused and was like, why did they ask you that? And I was like, because they're an idiot. And my dad very visibly like recoiled from me. It was like a fear response. And because I had just listened to Jay Shetty's podcast, I was able to notice that in the moment and correct my tone, because my dad kind of like leaned back and then he said like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. And I was like, what? I'm not upset. Oh my gosh. They're like, not upset at all. Like you can ask whatever you want. And it was because I got like upset and animated that my dad felt like his question had pissed me off, and he didn't want to piss me off because he so desperately wants to connect with me, and he wants all of our conversations to be received by me as a good and positive experience. And so it was awesome for me to be able to correct that in real time, because typically what would happen is like he'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. And then we would change the subject and then move on. And it would be like an awkward thing that was kind of weirdly hanging in the air. But since I understood, I was like, oh, because I got upset, he is feeling like I'm upset with him, not upset with the person at work. Like those are two, that's one and the same to him right now in this moment. And I need to bring it back down to like a level, even tone. Whereas my mom, who was sitting right there at the table, she totally got it. Like she 100% was like, knew that I wasn't mad at my dad. I was mad at the person at work. I was mad at the situation. And that was very clear to her. And we were totally on the same page, and there was no disconnect there at all. So I know that when I talk to my mom, because I think she's similar to me, and like she'll get very animated about certain things when she tells stories if she's passionate about it. And because we have that in common, I love that when I talk to my mom, like I can be super passionate and animated, and I can get angry or I can get sad. And when it's not directed at her and it's directed at the topic or the thing or something else, like that's totally cool. Like she's able to differentiate that. But when I'm talking to my dad, he doesn't have that skill. And that's where I have the information now for me to know, like I need to keep my tone even, because getting animated is going to make him uncomfortable, and he's going to no longer be able to hear the words that I'm saying because he's going to be overwhelmed by the emotion that I'm bringing, and is going to feel that it's directed at him. And so that's an example of like something like this is something that I've learned in general, but also the way the information that I have about each of my parents and how I can now move differently in conversations with them to make it a more positive experience for both of us, which I think is really, really cool. It's like a night and day difference from years ago when I was house hunting and my parents were helping me because my mom was my real estate agent. Like we looked at so many places that I just hated. Like I thought everything was gross and ugly, and I was like, I'm not gonna live there. I'm not gonna live there. And part of the issue was that the apartment that I lived in was a new construction. So I was the first person to live in my unit, and everything was beautiful and clean and new. And I love new because I love clean and I love updated. And so there was a condo that we looked at that the owner had very recently renovated, like full head to floor to ceiling reno, and it was beautiful. And they also used a lot of the colors that I like my home now, every place that I've lived has been ocean themed. Like those are just I like beach themed. Like I really like sandy tones and like blues and blue greens, like sea glass tones. It's just like is calming to me, and that's the environment that I like. And the owner of this condo had like a similar vibe and aesthetic. And after we toured the place, my dad, like very excitedly, because I had said that I liked it, and it was like, this was like weeks of us looking at places that I hated, and I finally found one that I liked. And so my dad turned to me and very excitedly, he was like, I know what you like about this place. And I was like, oh yeah? And he said, yeah, it's because it's like an apartment. And so the condo was like, it was a 1-bed, 1-bath. It was on a 3rd floor of a building. So it wasn't a house, it was a condo. It was very small. And what was funny to me was that what all the other places had in common was they were homes. Like they had multiple floors, they were a lot bigger. And so he was noticing something different about this place, and he was very excited because he was like, oh, I learned something about you. Like you don't want a house, you want an apartment style condo. And I don't actually remember how I responded to him in the moment, but I know that inside I felt very sad because he was so excited about having connected with me over something, and he was wrong. I was like, I don't like the place because it's a small apartment style condo. I like it because it's new and clean and already painted the colors that I would paint it. Like it's the aesthetic. And I thought that was obvious, but it's not, because that's in my head. That's not something that my dad and I have ever talked about. And I feel like at the time, I didn't have the tools to be able to explain that to him. Like I probably just shut down and like moved on. And maybe I told him he was wrong, and then he probably was confused because he really thought that he like had something there. And then that was probably an unfortunate, like we both walked away from that conversation, like not feeling great about it. And so if we were to have that conversation today, I would like stay very calm and even keeled. And I would say like, hey, I see that like you are identifying something that's different about that last place that we looked at and all the places that we've looked at prior to it. And so you are right that that's something that's different about it, but that particular thing that's different isn't what I like about it. What I like about it is, and then I would like give the list of things. And if I could keep like it, if I don't get worked up about that, like you don't understand me, you don't get what I'm trying to say, you don't know me. Like if I can keep myself in a space where I don't do that, and I can say like, I really see you trying to connect with me here, like let me meet you on the other side of it, then that's really awesome. But I will also say, like, in my experience, both people have to be doing this work. So like while I'm learning the thing about like I need to do this with my tone, and I need to like pay attention to these things, my dad has also been learning I need to ask her these kinds of questions. She wants me to go more in depth with her job and really understand what she does, not just the job title and the company that she works at. And those are changes that he has made, that he has started to do. And so like that's kind of for me, like when I say like, if I'm not going to have deep conversations with people that like are only capable of small talk, it's because I only have so much time and I only have so much energy, and most of my friends are so good at this nuanced, deep conversation that at the end of the day, if I have the option to call somebody and tell them about my day, and they're going to give me feedback and tell me what they're hearing and like that I learned throughout the day. And they're also going to tell me about their day and how they're learning and growing. And we're going to have this really interesting and deep conversation. If I have the option between calling that person or calling somebody who's going to say, cool, sounds like you had a good day, I'm going to call the first person every single time, because that's just what I personally desire and need. And I think the person who like just wants to hear I had a good day, cool, me too, glad you're safe. Like if that's enough for you, I'm not saying that that's wrong. There are a lot of people out here in the world that like that's all that they want, and that is enough, and that's okay. I'm not asking for those people to change or do anything different. Like what I'm really trying to do with this podcast is reach the people who that's not enough for, and we want to go deeper and just try to help us explore different ways to do that. I know I need to start wrapping up this episode. So in terms of the hard conversation of the week, I feel like it should be my breakup, but honestly, it wasn't a hard conversation at all. It was like 4 total messages. It just was not, we didn't even like discuss anything. I was just like, yeah, I don't want to pursue this. And he said, okay. And so I guess it was more the conversations before that were hard for me, because I was really caught between like, I don't want this person to feel dismissed or uncared for, because I really do care for him and I think he is so lovely. And I ultimately just could not break through. I don't feel like I got to know him well enough to be able to say like, you're somebody that I want to pursue a life with or not. And I think I would have really loved to have a conversation, because I ultimately don't think that he actually understood like what I needed that I wasn't getting. I think our emotional wells are just such different depths. And ultimately, like, you know, he didn't ask like why or anything. Like he just said, okay, which was another thing to me. I'm just like, you know, I want to talk to people that like are gonna ask more questions and like give me some feedback. So I mean, it wasn't hard in terms of like the conversation itself was hard to have, but it was hard in terms of like, I think it's always disappointing whenever any relationship ends, no matter how short or long the relationship was, because like you want it to work, you know, like you want things that you've invested your time and your energy in to work out. You know, but I am not a person that like ever regrets time that I have put into relationships. I try not to. I try to never say that like I hate all my exes or that like dating anybody was a waste of time, because ultimately I have learned something about myself and about other people from every relationship that I've ever been in. Romantic relationships, friendships, working relationships, all of them teach me something. And I do think that God brings people in our lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And I feel like when I was younger, I wanted everyone to be in my life for a lifetime, and I was really trying to hang on to people. And more recently, I'm trying to be like, okay, this person is not in my life for a lifetime. They were a reason or a season, and the reason has been realized or the season has ended, and that's okay. And because I now know that, I'm not going to continue forward in what I feel like would become a waste of our time and energy. But I'm not going to look back on the time that we spent as a waste, because it ultimately taught me something. I am obsessed with all things film and TV. So if you're new here, I always like to end with what I'm watching right now. I also feel like in the streaming age, it's so hard to find something that other people are watching. Like I constantly have friends texting me about new shows that they love, that I'm like, sure, I'll add it to my list, and like I'll probably never get to it because there's not enough time in life to watch everything that I would want to. But I did just watch Netflix's new Spanish drama. Oh my gosh, what was it called? Between Father and Son. And it was so good. They're taking the like, my sisters watch Drama Box, which I don't really know what that is, but I guess it's like really dramatic, really short episodes, and Netflix is trying that model because our attention spans are just getting shorter and shorter. So it's a 20 episode show, but they are 8 minutes a piece. I think the pilot might be 10 minutes, but all the rest are 8 minutes. So it's really, really quick. Like it's easy to get through the whole thing. And my Lord, it was dramatic. I loved it. I was so entertained. That and then Off Campus on Prime Video I watched, and I really, really, really liked that. I thought the pilot was bad, to be honest. Sorry to all the Off Campus fans out there. The pilot is weird. There were a lot of weird actor and director, just a lot of choices were made in the pilot that I was like, honestly, a little confused that it got picked up after that. But I would say halfway through episode 2 on had me in a chokehold. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like 100% loved it. Those are really the only new things that I am watching. Other than that, I'm still doing my like Disney rewatches. I think I finished all of my like CW show rewatches from my teen years. Oh no, I'm still rewatching Nikita. I take that back. And then I'm always rewatching all of Shonda's shows because I just think that Shonda Rhimes is a genius, and I like to study her storytelling. So like, I literally just finished How to Get Away with Murder like 2 months ago, and now I started it again. I started Scandal again the other day because I just think the way that Shondaland crafts story is so far above what anybody else in the industry is doing, and I'm just really fascinated by it. And then on the movie side, I don't have any screenings this week. This is actually the first week in a while that I haven't had a screening, but last week I saw Pressure, which was phenomenal. Absolutely loved it. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. It made me really anxious, which I think it was supposed to do. So the performances were phenomenal. Like it's a really, really great film. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, if anything was new to your perspective, if you learned something, I would love for you to leave me a rating and a review and share with a friend or parent or someone you want to discuss this stuff with. If you have questions, comments, concerns, or want to chat with me, you can send me an email at realhonestpod@gmail.com, and I'll be back here every Wednesday at 6 a.m. with new episodes. Okay, bye.
I'm not here to sugarcoat, life's already a bumpy road. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you out. Let's talk it through, hear me and you, let's keep it real honest.